Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Adobe Live here on Behance. I hope you are having a lovely Monday, as it's a lovely start to the week here in the UK, and we are joined by a very lovely guest today. We are joined by Amanda Lee Kohlberg. Hey, Amanda, how you doing? Oh, I think you might be frozen. Frozen for me, definitely. I don't know if you're frozen for everybody else. Let me know in the chat. We are joined by an excellent crew here today. I can see everybody is present in the chat. I want to say a quick hello to everybody. I can see Sandrine, I can see Gareth, Andrea, Stefan, and who else have we got? Angus, I see you in there. And so, yeah, great to see everybody with us today. Today, I know that the title of this session said something about formal, what does it say here? Formal settings. But that isn't actually what we're doing today. We're covering visual identity. And Amanda, I think you have unfrozen. You're back in the room. How you doing?
I'm back. Yeah, our internet has a really good timing of getting unstable. Maybe it's really internet connection. Nervous.
Don't worry at all. This is what happens when we're live. I mean, everybody here is pretty much used to my dog Elvis jumping. I don't think he's made an appearance yet, but he does tend to bark if anybody walks by. So we're all used to it. This is what happens when we're live. So yes, Amanda, you're joining us from Berlin, which is really great to have you on Adobe Live. Today, we're going to be looking into visual identity and the Boys Club. So tell us a little bit more about you and about the Boys Club and what we're going to do today.
Yeah. So there are kind of different layers. The Boys Club is this collective of 6 designers, kind of independent designers. So 4 people working completely independently, and then me and my partner working as one company. And the company we run is called Formal Settings. So that's where that name came from. And so we're like 50-50. I'm Swedish, my partner is Danish, and we collaborate. We met when we studied in Copenhagen during our bachelor's degrees, and that's where we kind of started to take on projects together and do competitions. And after graduating, we did all these different things and traveled and studied and kind of always knew that we wanted to work full-time together and live in the same city. So in 2018, we moved here to Berlin to do that full-time, and that's also when we met all the other people from the Boys Club, more or less. A little bit later, we kind of slowly teamed up and created this collective. And so that's us. We're working really closely together, me and Siri. I think in a way we are 5 units. So the 4 different independent designers, illustrators, and then me and Siri, we just share all projects completely between us, just like work from Dropbox, share all documents, and just take turns flip work between us.
Wow. And you sound so busy. I mean, in the green room, we were chatting about streams and about how you can watch our Adobe Live streams in YouTube afterwards. And we were saying about all the streams. And you were saying how you have no time for Netflix or anything. So work must be crazy busy, right? You're just on lots of different projects, right?
I mean, work is one side of it. And then I guess we just do a lot of things, other things as well. Like we use the Boys Club as an event space. So we do have a lot of different events. There was one on Friday, there will be one in a few weeks, and they take a lot of preparation. And then we're also involved in organizing this design festival that is going on in different countries. And then there's hobbies. I also told you briefly that we're taking calligraphy classes to freshen up that skill again. So I think it's not all work, it's just all these different hobbies and interests and people.
Love it. And you mentioned earlier as well, actually, to me, that in Berlin, there's a really big creative scene. And we've had other creatives on from Berlin as well, but in the past. But what's so great about living in Berlin and being surrounded by creatives there?
I lived in Sweden and Denmark before coming here. And Gothenburg, where I'm from.
Oh no, I think you're cutting out a bit. Oh no, the Wi-Fi is going today, everybody. I don't know if you can hear Amanda. You're going, Amanda, don't go. Well, it's not the first time that you're going to hear from the Boys Club team today. So Amanda's here today. As she mentioned, there was something from the Boys Club last week, and we've got more Boys Club here next week as well. So lots from the Boys Club that we'll be covering. And while we wait for Amanda to come back to us, come back, Amanda. I'll let you know a bit about what's coming up this week, because we've got very busy streams. And on Wednesday, Rufus is back in the room. So it's been a while since we've had Rufus on a stream. I don't know if any of you know, Rufus, of course, is somebody that set up Adobe Live for us in the UK. So Rufus is going to be here with Monica Gauso, and he is going to be doing a 1 anchor point challenge in Illustrator. So that cannot be missed. That's on Wednesday. And then I can see Oliver's like, Rufus, who's that? Everyone knows Rufus with amazing hair, as Tony and Tim sang about in a previous stream. And then on Friday, we've got Marco Bucci here, character designing in Photoshop with our very own Julia Ziega. So lots coming up this week. And Amanda, I can see that you're back with us. You're back in the room.
I am. Sorry.
Don't worry. As I said, we're used to it here at Adobe Live, and we haven't got to food yet. Normally, you know, if you freeze again, I'll be going straight into cake, donuts, tea and coffee.
Okay.
Anything like that.
That's a good sign.
We're all good. So yes, as you were saying, you know, this is the start of the Boys Club. You know, you're with us today, and we've got more activities with Boys Club coming as well. So over next week as well. And should we jump into it today? Should we have a look at the visual identity project that you're starting?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe I can tell a little bit just like about my partner and I, just so you get an idea of our work, because I think then it's easier to understand a little bit how we approach the specific project. So we can start by having a look at Behance. I suppose gives a good idea. Overview. We're not screen sharing, are we?
Yeah, you need to share your screen again. I think when you dropped, it might have disappeared from the screen share. Here we go.
There we go.
It's coming.
Perfect. Yeah. So as I said, like there are these different puzzle pieces. So me and Siri make up formal settings, which make up this fifth of the Boys Club. And like you also mentioned, you will see more of this lovely gang that we get to share our day-to-day with. So this is our shared website. Very, very colorful. And yeah, this is not really the place where we show our work, because this is in a way the website for the collective and the space. And then you can go like and check out the individual designers and see their work. Vicky was streaming earlier today. But yeah, we give a little sample of each person is kind of represented by something. And what I kind of like about this page is because we are very different people with different styles, we wanted kind of the site to be something that people could also interact with, and it could kind of represent all of our different styles. And you can make it your own by just changing the color settings.
I like this. I like the fact that it's interactive. Very cool.
Like something a little bit playful.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then there's of course Instagram, and also something that may be worth mentioning is that like, yeah, so the top row right now in our Instagram for formal settings is kind of self-centered. Because yeah, we just had a rebrand. We were called something else for 8 years. We're called Studio Jetzt immer, and yeah, so we had that name actually since graduating. So that's 8 years ago.
Cool.
And it's been this like journey towards finding our form and our focus.
And what's been your favorite project that you've both worked on since setting up formal settings?
I don't know if there is such a thing. I just feel like whenever we get to work with something that like other creatives are kind of our favorite types of projects. We really like the Ants project that I'll show you a little bit more about, because it's also like the choreographer that we were working with is another creative thinker, which means that she brings a lot of thoughts and inspiration and research into the project. So I think like any project where we come out feeling like we've learned something or like discovered something about the world that we didn't know before, or that we got to know a field that we just wouldn't have gotten into if it wasn't for that project, I think that's would better like characterize a favorite project than any specific. It's not like, oh, we love making books or we love visual identities, but it's more the characteristics of a project, I would say.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. And so you're working with a dancer at the moment. Is that right? Is that the project that you're working on right now?
Yeah. So let me show you. He wants to translate to German all the time. So yeah, this is the project.
Cool. I can see some of the work here. I think you're breaking up again, which is such a shame. As we wait for you to come back to us, Amanda, anybody that has any questions for Amanda today, get those in the chat. We're chatting on Behance, not on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, come over to Behance, behance.net/live. And then, yeah, any questions? I was very impressed with the website and the color, as you can imagine. Always appreciate a colourful scene. Anything interactive as well is always good. And watch out, Gareth. I know you're not feeling very well today. So bright colours. Watch your eyes. All right. So I can see Julia has joined in the chat. Hey, Julia. I know that we've got you here on Friday. I'll definitely be tuning into you on Friday. Amanda, I think you're back.
I am. I'll try and share again.
Oh, don't worry.
Technology is not my friend at the moment.
Don't worry. I can see your screen.
Great. Yeah, so actually like Ants is a little bit of an outlier because it's quite photo driven. I think if we scroll down, you can see like it's mostly just like colors and type is quite characteristic, like projects like this where we can combine type and motion and color. This is the typeface actually that my partner is working on right now. The first type family that will come out. Cool. We do both graphic and type design, but yeah, if there is color, like a lot of it is like just one, and we just dedicate ourselves to that. But yeah, ANSYS is a little bit different. It's also very type driven, but it's also driven by photography.
And I can see on your bar at the bottom, I can see After Effects, I can see Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator. Do you divide up projects between you and your partner? So that, for example, do you specialize in the InDesign and the Photoshop, and then your partner specializes in the After Effects, or do you do everything?
Ooh, that's a good question. Actually, we've almost always been doing everything, both of us. Wow. I think there's really massive overlap in what we are interested in and also what our skill sets are. And right now we're working on like differentiating ourselves because it's not the best use of resources to just be super good at the same thing. So Siri is focusing way more on like the type design side, and I'm focusing on the motion side. But in terms of like Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, I think it's quite similar. Like what we do, I do a little bit more image editing and like print preparation of images for art books and things like this. And also if something goes into After Effects, usually that's me. But if something goes into a type design program or like takes this direction, it's definitely Siri. That's kind of the division of labor between us.
That's cool. And I've got to ask which your favorite app is out of all of those, because they're powerful. You've got all the 4 powerful apps there. What would you what's your go-to out of all of those?
InDesign. I think I'm just really a lover of, because I think like my background and like first passion has always been print, and like everything that can come out on paper, and always been like super nerdy about books. And I think that's why InDesign and like the first gateway program where you realize that you can set something up and make spreads and make it look like a book. Like it's just a really powerful program because you can do a little bit of like the graphics, but just working with text and image together. I think I'm like the programs you see in my doc. I kind of like all of these different ones, but I'm an InDesign fan.
Nice. There's somebody in our chat today, one of our viewers, Gareth, who loves After Effects, does everything. He's really good at After Effects. And he said that he was sure that InDesign is a favorite. Do you want to ask again? So, yes, Gareth, that was a very clear InDesign.
I'm a really big fan of After Effects too, but I think because I'm still quite new in After Effects, like I feel like I've been working, I actually started working in Cork Express back when I was 15, and then InDesign came into my life, and I kind of stayed in InDesign, but it's just been in my life since so many years. Whereas After Effects is just, I'm newer in it. I still, sometimes I do something and like, I don't even know what I just did and how to get back to where I was. I'm getting better and better. And like the more motion design we use in our projects, the better I get, and the more comfortable and at home I feel in After Effects. But InDesign, I don't get lost ever. And After Effects, once in a while, I can go down some path and not know what happened. And that's still a little bit intimidating about that.
Yeah, there's always stuff to learn. Like I join streams every week, and I learn so much. Like each week I'm like writing things down in my pad, and so yeah, always learning, as you say, always learning.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun approach. I really love studying, and I think both like Siri and I we haven't really stopped studying. Like we just keep taking tutorials and trying new things, and that's also something actually that kind of characterizes an interesting project. It's when we get to do something we're not completely comfortable with, and we have to do something new, which is scary, but also usually makes us like, better designers afterwards.
Oh, absolutely. So where do you go about starting a visual identity project then? Like, how do you begin this? Is this to start with the interviews and the, like, how do you get started?
Yeah. So actually, I guess this is a good time to show you how we started the ANTS project, because I think that's actually quite indicative of how projects start. So of course, it starts with someone approaching us usually, saying that they want to involve us, and lots of meetings and talking about like, we're really interested in people's background to doing the projects and what they're passionate about, and like how they want to communicate about their projects. But yeah, for this one, the starting point was ants. So that's the title of the show, and that's the inspiration from the choreographer. So these little creatures we had to look a lot at in this process. She had already done so much research that she shared with us, which was really nice. And like we got links to YouTube videos with David Attenborough talking about like how fascinating these creatures are.
David, he's a legend. Honestly, we big love him in this country. Big love. Yeah.
And so like we just look a lot at what, so the ants themselves and the way they move and the way that their like societies work was the inspiration for the dance performance. So Ants is a dance performance piece that was like performed in Copenhagen. So this visual identity was like the poster and all the promotional material for this theater piece. And already like from the first videos, we could see, okay, there's something colorful here. There are some colors that we can use. So we kind of bookmarked that in our heads and know that, okay, there's something interesting about that. And then we just go on this research tour, like also because the piece is about like ant colonies and like the way they live and collaborate. We looked a lot at ant tunnels, and this is like how they look naturally, and this is how they look when they're in an ant farm. So there's already this like stylizing, making something that is very like organic and messy into something very graphic. And also in this theater piece, there was a university professor who's dedicated his life to researching ants. He was the consultant also, and he's using these kinds of ant farms in his research. So for us, like this meeting between organic and scientific was very inspiring, and also like how something that is so messy or soft can be stylized and more graphic.
And it's like a cool maze. It's so clever.
Exactly. And like we could start seeing like text fields and grids in this, and like start to see some path towards some sort of design. Because also something that we knew early on in the project was that this was going to be posters, roll-ups, banners, like all these different formats, Instagram, but also something really big hanging on a wall. So we needed to create a flexible design system, something that doesn't have like one form, but something that can like adapt to the format that it's in.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? You've got to think about all of the means, all of the things that you need to produce, and how that changes the design. So it has to, Absolutely.
Yeah, if you don't have that overview, if you learn late in the project that, oh, this is also going to be used in a different, this is also going to be used as motion, or like, it's good to know, of course, like have the overview from the beginning, the use cases. And some other inspiration we had was like this kind of, because so the piece, the idea is that the dancers in this piece are kind of performing the role of the ants. So we knew that this is kind of this world of like zooming very much in, and like zooming in on a world that you don't normally have access to. They're just these like tiny little creatures, this blur, and we don't get close to them properly. So like any visual representations of being very close to something was also inspiring. How do you show these like measurements, like nanometer measurements, or these are like glass plates that you put under a microscope. Like if we could borrow some different visual indications of zooming in. So like looking at how can we stylize this? Can we use little lines to indicate that we are looking through a microscope? Can we show that something is like in frame? This like zooming in, zooming out indicators. So now already like we're building up a toolbox, and those are the decisions that go into, like that's the research that go into the art direction and design decisions. So then we start looking at, okay, what material are we actually going to produce? So there's a photographic style, because yeah, like I mentioned before, we usually work quite graphic, color and type. And in a project like this, of course, it's really important to show the dancers. They are like the focal point of the project. And the choreography is very inspired by like how ants look when they collaborate. And they just become this kind of pile. These are weaver ants. So they kind of weave these bridges, and it's really hard to like see where one end and the other one start. They're just like, there's no division between whole and part, or like the individual and the colony. So that inspired having like these kind of photographs being taken. So these are the dancers, and we're kind of fascinated by like how it's just this pile of limbs and body parts, and like people are completely interwoven. And one thing is this, you start to get a little bit of that in this picture, but then working with the crop and also turning the picture. So you see like the floor is here, but here the floor is here. Like doing little things like that to the picture takes away even more of like, you can clearly see where whose leg is this, and like where does this arm exactly come from, and like kind of start to play with something that would feel a little bit like this.
That's cool. Those pictures are brilliant.
They're really pretty. Like they're
Really
beautifully lit. They have this black box vibe. They're taken on a stage, so it has this like clarity. You just get the color from the skin tones, from the clothes, from the styling, and there's this softness and these hard contrasts. I really like these pictures too. And then if we keep like looking in the toolbox, there's type. So we've picked 2 typefaces for this, or like 2.5. This one is called Favorit, because this show is actually like, it includes hip hop and house and floor work and b-boying and all these like street style dance styles. And that's the world that the performers come from, and that's also the world where a lot of the audience came from. So we knew that we wanted something that could be really sporty and just bold and wide and grounded and feel like the sneakers on the floor. And in some of the text we've also used, so this is like this super extended wide version, and we also paired it with just the one with the regular proportions, velvet medium. So they're from a type founder called Dynamo, obviously Dynamo. So we felt that they could like bring in the sporty contemporary aesthetic, also because some of the audience would be from just like regular theater goers, some people that would be interested in contemporary performance and not come from this street dance background. So we also didn't want to use like graffiti, any cliche style like that, but something that would just feel clean and contemporary.
Yeah.
But then also have another typeface that we could pair it with that could represent kind of this more organic antsiness, basically. So
that looks more like ants to me. That
exactly.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So there's this like difference between the width. It's way more like it goes from wider to thinner. These ant legs, they have these like little points at the ends. So something that like without again looking like an ant, without getting gimmicky, still having a little bit of this like more quirky, dynamic, organic, antsy aesthetic.
Oh.
So so we're kind of like based on research, again, like pictures we found, pictures that come from the choreographers' research, all of that goes into kind of building up this toolbox of typography and image, these like scientific elements, and then just to loop back a little bit to these tunnels, because based on those we've drawn grids. And this is not like grid in the sense, usually when we talk about grids, it's like whatever is in InDesign in the background of a layout to create this invisible structure. But we kind of like that it could be a visible structure that can just be put on. And you could see it as the tunnels, the ant tunnels, but you can also see it as these like the rooms that the ants lives in, and also kind of like this play between the positive and the negative shapes. Basically, you can choose to look at the lines or you can choose to look at the shapes.
And Sandrine in the chat says, I really love the idea of the maze as a typography element. Absolutely. It looks really cool, really good.
Hear that. Yeah, and basically also by creating something that is like just this weird grid that isn't so strict would be key, we hoped, and which luckily also kind of worked out, to make something that was flexible for all these different formats, because you can see a square, you can see something wide, you can see something tall, and like by pushing, making something that is and that can really easily we can.
Oh no, I think we've lost you again, Amanda. I think the Wi-Fi's gone again. While we wait for Amanda to come back, if there's any other questions for Amanda or anything on visual identity and creating this or this type of project from scratch, get the questions into behance.net/Adobe Live. I can see there's loads of chat today about learning and about when to take in, when to take on new subjects or learn, schools, tools for the job. And so, keep that coming. It's really good to read, how you're answering each other's queries and things in the chat. Amanda, you're back. You cut out them. So I thought, it's Wi-Fi. It is just the way. Don't worry. Oh no, we've got again. This is Wi-Fi. Oh my gosh. I can see, here we go. Yeah, Stuart says, this shows that when you really process the brief, it helps in getting the work now, the 80-20 rule, research and the design starts to appear. That's what Stuart says in the chat. Maria asks you a question, Amanda. How much time has been spent on the research phase for this project?
I don't know. I don't want to say half, but a lot. Yeah, and it happens over time as well. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. I don't even know when I'm cutting out anymore. Quite a lot of time is based on research, because it's so important for the end product that we're making the design for. That is so research based. I feel like a lot of projects that we make are quite research based and concept development based. It's hard to put a number like 30% of the time is put into research, but always a good chunk of time, I would say. Getting to know, it's also, if it's a field that we know better, maybe it's not so necessary, but ants, didn't know a lot about them before we did this, which means we just need to do more research and explore more.
Yeah, I think there's a few people that have commented about the maze, the ant's nest, the maze, and that's genius, bringing that into the design of this, because it could be just, really simple, just, basic typeface, but you've got the maze added, it adds the extra element, it shows that you've really done the research in there. So yeah, that looks good.
I was thinking maybe I can show actually how it's constructed on a very technical level.
Yeah, absolutely. We got time. Halfway through.
Illustrator.
I think you might have frozen again. Oh no. Hopefully you'll come back soon, Amanda. Don't go. Oh no. Well, any other questions for Amanda today, get those in the chat. Anybody that has anything that they want to add to this. Also, any tips that you might have actually about creating an identity, or how you start. I saw that there's the 80-20 rule that Stuart mentioned in the chat today. How much time is too much time? Do you think 50-50 is too much in terms of design? Or do you think, Gareth asks, do you have any emergency Elvis videos you could throw in? No, but Elvis is in the doghouse today. He has been a naughty dog this weekend, so he's in the doghouse. He's left the building. Amanda, you're back.
I am.
You're back again. Don't worry, you were just about to show us more in depth in Illustrator, and we're all here for it.
Cool. So I picked this pink stroke. Usually, when drawing on something else, I kind of like to use a color that is definitely not in the design. Just to make sure it's just super clear that I see what I'm doing. And then pen tool, so that's just the P. And first of all, just drawing up where it would be nice to have these lines. I mean, now I know, because I have the grid we ended up using right here, I know a little bit of where we're going with this. But yeah, you get the idea. If I would have kept going like this, I would just keep building on the same stroke, but by pressing Command, I can easily deselect it, keep making new grid strokes that kind of fit in between the bodies of the dancers and where I would just see interesting lines happening. And then, when most of the stuff is there, just select it all and expand. And expand is something I use a lot. So actually I've made my own keyboard shortcut for it. I don't know, maybe it would be fun to show. So I don't know if you know that you can use the keyboard shortcuts. There are a million built in, but you can also under edit bring them up. And I have my own set.
That's cool. No.
They're just more intuitive to me. You can bring hide. Am I here?
Yeah. That's cool. So you've made how many of your own shortcuts have you made? Have you got is it just the one or two, or are there a lot? A lot.
There's a handful, and some are just ones that I think for showing and hiding guides. There are some that is Command. I can't even remember what it is, but for me, a guide is a line, so I made it Command I, so I can just really intuitively remember it. I think there might be a different one for expand as well, but I've made one just says Command E, and that brings up expand for me. And we quickly merge them in Pathfinder. And then, as you can see, it's not just a square blocky grid, but to get a little bit of the vibe of this, where something is sharp and something is round, just rounded some of the corners. And with a white arrow, I know it's called direct selection. I think everyone I've ever met call it white arrow. Black arrow, use black arrow, white arrow. Mm-hmm. You can just like select these different points, and now up here it just automatically brings up the corner options. And I know that I want round corners. And you can just like, yeah, quickly round them like this. And of course, do many at the same time.
Adil in the chat says, fantastic work, by the way.
Thanks. That's sweet of you. With these, it's quite nice or quite easy because we just want them to be completely rounded. I don't have to think about how many millimeters. Like for the other ones, I know that I want like exactly 5 millimeters to have the same rounding everywhere. Here I could just mark them and just click. And when it hits like its maximum, that's 2.558 apparently. But yeah.
Kirsty's with you, by the way, in the chat. She says she loves a good keyboard shortcut.
Me too. Wow. It's just essential for having a good workflow. You don't want to be up here messing around in these menus. Like it's good to have them all there, but just when you're working quickly, it just interrupts your workflow so much if you have to go find in a sub menu the command.
And I'm not surprised that Gareth has his own set of shortcuts. I was expecting them to be After Effects shortcuts, but you've got your own AI shortcuts. Offset path, simplify stroke are two of his.
Yeah.
Two big ones. Stuart wants to know about color palette, Amanda. So does that appear in your research, or do you head into inspiration of other projects to get the color palette?
I mean, for this one, it was quite easy because we had like the costumes and the ants themselves to look for colors. I think by now it's also quite intuitive. There are these, what are they called? They were called cooler ones, these like color palettes that Adobe actually makes. I remember while studying, we looked at those for inspiration.
I need those.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
They are nice in terms of like finding good pairings. I think by now it's quite intuitive. Yeah, like I said, usually there's like 1 or 2 colors at play. If we use 3 colors, that's like, wow, that's so colorful. That's almost too much. It's crazy. And I know that like most of the people that I surround myself with every day use 10 colors in every project they do. A lot of colors. So I think that's like the Scandinavian side. It's like black and white is the starting point, and then if 1 color is added, then that's like a lot.
It is very Scandinavian, actually. Yeah, and Tim's put the link to the color in the chat for everybody. So if you want to go and have a look at what Amanda was talking about, thanks, Tim. Thanks for that. And yet people are talking about, you know, colors here, and the fact that now they're now going to, you've inspired people to add their shortcuts now to get people more organized.
The things that you do all the time, just add your own shortcuts that you easily remember, so you don't have to think, was it Alt, Command, what? Like, just make something super easy that is easy to remember. I was actually going to show you a little bit more about how to construct a poster, like this collaboration between Illustrator and InDesign. Let's see, I'll move this menu out of the way. So now we're in InDesign, and yeah, everything starts with a blank slate. So this is an A1 poster. So I mean, that's like in ISO format, 59.4 times 84.1, I think, centimeters, 23 by 33 inches, so fairly big. Also, another nice little keyboard shortcut when you zoom in and out, like just Command 0, will just make sure that whatever artboard you have fits in the frame that you have. So you get like maximum size out of it. And then when you make something for print, definitely start by adding some bleed. The printer will want some bleed. So anything that has color or photo going over the edges, 3 or 5 millimeters is standard. And then we want some margins. So that's up in layout, margins and columns. So this is a little bit like a TV cooking show. You know, I've prepared beforehand. I know that it's 17.5.
No, all good.
And then there's the picture. I've also just like already put the crop of it here, so we can put it in quite easily. So the image is definitely like the majority of the poster. You can see like we haven't left a lot of space for anything else. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of space for type, but mostly it's about the dancers and about this interplay between their bodies. And then let's go back to Illustrator really quick. Grabbing this grid and adding it on top of them. So this is how all the different artworks are made. It's this like grid plus dancer, where you get this like
very cool
interplay between like you can see the lines, you can see the shapes, but also like they start getting even more disconnected, and it becomes even less about the individuals and more about how their body parts meet and how they interconnect.
Oh, that looks really good. And I like the fact that it's not the full page as well. I like the fact that it's more dynamic in that way.
Yeah. I can add some type as well. Let's bring up, so this is the content. We have the ends, the big title, come on. Tiny title. It's a pretty big poster. And what do we say was favorit in adult expanded? I believe it's 380.
So Amanda, while you're doing that, you mentioned, so you've got everything. We saw your Instagram earlier, which looked great. How do you often get hired for projects then? Do you think a lot of it's through your collaborations with the Boys Club, or is it the work you put on Instagram, or is it your portfolio? Like how do you get hired for work?
By now it's it's kind of a sad answer, because it's the hardest one to give as an advice to other people. But it's network and word of mouth, basically projects that we've done before. So, this cheesy sentence like your work is your best business card or things like this. Basically, people who've worked with you and had a good experience working with you, those are the ones that in the end new work will come from, in our experience. Of course, some people reach out of the blue, or some people encounter us through. The Boys Club is nice in this way, because you also get to share each other's network in some sense, or to some extent. Or if someone approaches us with a really illustration-based project, we will just contact like the other people of the Boys Club and say, one of you guys would be a way better match. And sometimes that goes the other way too.
Cool.
So, yeah, actually,
always good to hear.
But yeah, you get the idea. Adding some type, you can see down here how like it's all begun to come together.
Very cool. Nice.
If we're gonna get a little nerdy, like things like the logos here, one important part when you have all these little black things, or like things that need to appear similar, like just checking that they have the same shade of black. It's this important little print thing. And like if you mark everything or like select everything and it does this, that's not a good sign. So one of these might not have the right shade of black. So like checking through and keeping an eye on this panel. And we can see here, there is this one, rich black is showing up. So like just double checking that something that, one thing is when you do digital things, what you see on the screen is how it will stay, but print is just fickly, like really keeping an eye on these kind of details so it comes out right.
Yeah.
It's just important.
That is a very good point about the different color. Yeah, very good.
So this is like these different like the typographic elements, like this typeface that is related to the big ants typeface, but with more like classically readable proportions. We have these little like zoom in elements. Another thing that is good to mention, like layers, named layers, making sure that just things stay. Now I haven't organized it, but like the photo should be in the layer behind, and then the grid should be in the grid layer, all the text should be in the text layer, and so on. It's just good housekeeping. It helps in the long run having everything organized.
Definitely, I completely agree with that. And we have somebody called Joe Allen who joins our streams regularly. He's an expert in video and After Effects, and he does a really good streams about how to be organized and name all of the layers and all of the things, because and I've taken all of that advice on board. It's essential, isn't it? Especially when you revisit a project after some time to try and find everything.
Especially in After Effects, because one thing here, you can have many things in one layer, but in After Effects, things so easily become like this tower of layers. It's absolutely very easy to get lost in unless everything is very meticulously named. So just to show you around actually a little bit, speaking about these different formats. So for example, this is for Facebook and the ticket sales. We can take something that feels very related to the poster, but of course on this kind of format, the type shouldn't be here like on the poster, but of course it should be horizontal. And we can take some of these like grid elements. It's still just like one picture behind, but like in this crop, it gets like even more confusing where these legs are coming from, and like having this play between the shapes. And, you know, the logo of the venue is like nudged into the corner, and it is on Facebook too, but just in another corner. So we have something that is recognizable but still different. So that's like, I guess, the balance always with visual identity, having something that is recognizable throughout all these different media and platforms, but still having enough variation so that it's really adapted to whatever format, platform. Same with Instagram. That's of course like relating to the grid. So we could make something that would stretch over several images and be swipeable. And also here you can see like, and up until now, the color has been coming from costumes and dancers, but here like presenting this is the researcher, the ant researcher, this is the choreographer. We could like actually add color to the grid that come from like very early on in the research, where we're like, there's something nice about these colors.
Yeah, I saw you pull those out on the board at the beginning, the mood board. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And here it's also the same typefaces, so that's also a way of creating this recognizability and consistency over different platforms. So it's the same pairing of type, but it has a whole different look on Instagram, and some of these like little elements that we pull in that also are on the poster and so on. Programs, they're this like A4 zigzag fold. You know, it is not folded in on each other, but it's folded as a zigzag. So yeah, that's just an InDesign doc with a lot of grids and guides. It's just an A4, and maybe another little trick to show, you know, when you take a guide, it automatically becomes this like cyan color. Mm-hmm. So this is actually also just a guide, and it shows where this page ends and it will fold over to this page. If you right click and save ruler guides, you can make them like any of a whole range of colors. I can make it this electric blue, and sometimes giving different types of guides different colors, because some guides are more like showing your margins, some guides are showing how some logos are aligning or something. Just like actually, it's like naming layers, but giving different guides different colors, I find quite helpful.
That is a good tip, actually. We have a presenter, so Bart, he does a lot of the InDesign sessions at Max. He's always trying to get me into InDesign, and I use Photoshop for what I should be doing in InDesign, really, because
it's so common.
it's all of the rules of like the bleed lines, the margins, the and I always take a step back and go back to Photoshop. So it's good to see you saying, you can set things to different colors and so that it's clear to see, that is a good tip on the screen. Absolutely.
It's totally possible to keep things. Also, like things like this text box overlapping Command-Shift-C makes sure that like text boxes are never any bigger than they need to be, keeps them nice and snug. All of these could like be, tightened up. So there are all these like little tricks too. And then, of course, in print preparation, this has bleed too. So, there are a few more unnecessary anchor points, but all of this, because it's color, and these things would be cut here after being printed. Anything that is not just white will have to go out to the bleed edges. So that's like a part of the print preparation.
Yeah.
To sit and do.
David in the chat says, learning InDesign was probably one of the most useful things for me in university. Nice one.
Yeah.
Nice.
Same. Hashtag same. There's so much space around these pages, and it's because, as you can also see in the pages panels, like all these different things with different formats are in the same document. That can be useful sometimes, and it's like totally possible to have things that are different formats in one document. But when actually making print files for this, we have kept it in separate documents. Also because things like this happen, like when you import something from one document into another, there's no reason they should have so much space, but that's one of the like bugs that happen.
Yeah. And how many touch bases would you have with your client from the very beginning, from doing the research to then starting, to build everything and then start actually getting it all ready? How many touch bases? How many times are you connecting with them?
Also very different. Like in this specific case, we had some initial meetings talking about like, what do you need? Which different media, like, so that we can get this overview that we talked about in the beginning, that is important to know when making design decisions and art direction decisions, knowing something about the audience and all of these things. And then based on all the research that we got at that point and all the background, we could start making like initial drafts. And we're quite inclusive in our design process. We're really not like the kind of people who will be like, okay, good, see you. And then we lock ourselves in a room and make something genius and come out and say, this is your design. That just doesn't work ever. So we make first initial sketches and we meet with the client, in this case, the choreographer, and say like, hey, we have these and these thoughts. Actually, maybe we have two different ideas. We could go a little bit in this direction or in this direction. Let's have a look and discuss. And then based on that, we narrow in. We get some feedback, and it's quite like an iterative process. So how many steps that iteration takes, like if it's a very complex website, many. In this case, I think 2 presentations, and then based on the second round of feedback on way more refined sketches, we could make final designs. But we were also quite aligned quite from the beginning. I think we understood what she was after. If it's a new client or someone that we don't know very well, it might take longer to kind of get on the same page, get into each other's brains. Very different, but just having all these like check-ins whenever we are uncertain if we are on the right track, or get a new idea, like, oh, we could also do this, that would be cool. Let's just like mock that up and show it and see if they're on board with that. And like, we can.
Yeah. And you can see here that they've had a photo shoot of all of the dancers, to get, the right images. Do you ever use stock photography, or do you really rely on I guess it depends by project, right? It really depends.
I mean, I think it's no secret that good stock photography is rare. And we in most cases, you can see when it's stock photography. Of course, not in all cases, but most projects that we do are like an art book, and the picture material is the artworks from the artist, or a magazine where there's an interview and there has been a photo shoot with a photographer with the interviewee, getting photographed for the piece, and so on. So it's rarely very relevant for us to use stock photography. Quite often there is a photographer associated somewhat with the project that we're working on. Yeah, I think almost always we have some image material that is like inherent in the project.
I know, definitely. And David asks a question in the chat that I want to know the answer to this one too. Do the photo cutouts say anything, or are they just shapes using the ant maze? Is it a word in there?
Oh, that's a really funny question. Yeah, because this could be kind of a lowercase e if you just make a white shape here. And I guess you could totally hide like a code and make typography out of this. I think there's already like a lot of layers in this kind of posters. There's this like foreground, background, there's all this different type. And these little elements, I think also having typography in this might be distracting. I don't know. It's kind of a fun idea. Maybe we should, if we develop this further. So actually now, yeah, the performances are over for now, and the next step for this is that they're going to start touring. So it is a project that for now it's finished, but we might like take up and work more on again.
Cool.
And so maybe we can explore that. Actually, for the After Effects people, I can show. So this is totally work in progress, not finished. I can show. This is a sketch. I'll bring this down so we get like a nice calm background. Sketch of like how this could work in animation, because it would also be fun to see if we can make this grid kind of follow the movement of the dancers. And right now it's not doing it very well. I like how she can like kick her leg and the grid can move. But I feel this has also a lot of potential for animation.
Definitely. And did you do this in After Effects?
I did.
Amazing. Yeah, this is cool. I like this. Yeah, really good.
So I think like going forward, if we're going to do new material, I think the next iteration of the poster will also have an animated aspect, because again, when something is designed to be flexible, like this is, the flexibility might as well be animated.
Fabulous. And we're nearly close to the end of the stream now. So if there are any kind of, any tips for people that are getting into this, what kind of tips would you give people that are starting up and getting into InDesign and character identity, visual identity? What do you think? What tips would you give?
Like getting into the software, just doing it, exploring it, and also taking tutorials, really helpful. But in terms of like visual identity, also it's a learning process. A good visual identity has these elements of like being like recognizable but different. So like just practicing a lot of how something can have that flexibility. I think my best tip would be to be patient and not expect to be great at things from day one. I mean, I'm still not great at After Effects, and that's okay. I feel like I've only been doing that for a few years, while other things I've been doing for more years. Just like being okay with everything being a learning process and making mistakes and seeing everything as a practice for the next project, instead of like having expectations on yourself, because it's so easy with Instagram and like all these different platforms, and Behance for that matter. Like you see all this great work. There's so many talented people out there, and just comparing yourself too much, like being inspired is good, but being intimidated, it's just so easy to fall into that and be like, oh, I have no idea how to do that. And it just takes time, and practice, and being okay with that. I guess trying to rest in it would be my tip with anything, if whatever it is you get into.
That is a really good tip. Really good. Well, it's been really lovely having you on today. And don't worry at all about Wi-Fi. This is the world we live in now. This is what happens. But it's so good that we got to see, so much of this project that you're doing with the Boys Club. And this isn't the only time you'll hear from the Boys Club at all as well, because we've got them coming back each week. And of course, on Wednesday this week, Rufus and Monica are here doing a 1 anchor point challenge in Illustrator. So busy week. Great advice that you gave there, Amanda. Everybody's showing you appreciation in the chat today. So for everybody as well that wants to watch this back, I know there were lots of late people that joined. You can watch this on YouTube. So after Behance today, move over to YouTube to have a look. And then the rest of everybody, we'll see you on Wednesday. Thank you, Amanda. Have a great rest of your Monday, everybody.
You too. Bye.